Now that we have looked at the positive principles for Sedevacantism, let's consider the case that Sedevacantism is a conclusion that cannot be reached in principle. This case is made in a number of different ways. Namely, the claim is that Sedevacantism cannot possibly be true, because A. The Church has rejected it, i.e. the Novus Ordo Church. B. Sedevacantism is based on an appeal to private authority or judgment. C. If Sedevacantism is true, it would render the Church invisible. Or D. If Sedevacantism is true, it would mean that the Church has defected. Let's examine each one of these claims in turn. Firstly, the claim that Sedevacantism is false because the Novus Ordo has rejected it should be a clear non-starter. It is a circular argument that begs the question. Sedevacantists claim that the Novus Ordo Church is illegitimate. Yet the logic of this argument is this. The church that Sedevacantism rejects, the Novus Ordo, is the true church. The true church must be right. The Novus Ordo Church has rejected Sedevacantism. Therefore, Sedevacantism must be false. And therefore, the church that Sedevacantism rejects, the Novus Ordo, must be the true church. See the difficulty? This relies upon the assumption that the Novus Ordo Church is the true church, but this is the very assumption that Sedevacantism challenges. And so, to accept this argument, or any variation of it, does not deal with Sedevacantism, but ignores it, with the conclusion that Sedevacantism is wrong because it is wrong. The question remains, but is it? Now let's consider the charge of private judgment. Sedevacantists have concluded that the Novus Ordo Church as a whole, including the people within it, have displayed anti-Catholic teaching and practices and are therefore not legitimate. The claim is that Sedevacantists have no right to do this because, as most Sedevacantists are laity, they have no authority to say when someone has transgressed against church teaching or defected from the faith, nor do they have the authority to remove someone's clerical office. The key point to make is that they don't. If a cleric has defected from the faith or does not hold the Catholic faith, no layman uses their own private judgment as if their own judgment is what finally removes the authority. The law removes their authority, and does this automatically. That individuals who do not profess the true Catholic faith are barred from positions of authority is an automatic consequence of church law and Catholic principle. The Magisterium states as much. According to canon law, any office becomes vacant upon the fact and without any declaration by tacit resignation recognised by the law itself if a cleric publicly defects from the Catholic faith. And we see this in many other teachings. Therefore, in the case of Sedevacantism, a layman does not decide to remove authority, but simply recognises when authority has been lost, or indeed was never held in the first place. One might continue to protest that a Sedevacantist cannot determine when a man is a heretic because we cannot see a man's will and intentions, i.e., we cannot judge the internal forum. This is irrelevant because Sedevacantists recognise manifest heresy, that is, when purported Catholics publicly and visibly teach or act in ways which are contrary to the faith. Finally, one might claim that we cannot say for sure if something has publicly, visibly transgressed the faith. This claim is simply absurd. To hold it would be to posit that the Catholic faith is so subtle, so opaque, and dare we say, so occult, that the average Catholic cannot tell what it really is, and hence, whether it has been upheld. Yet, what sense is there in teaching the Catholic faith unless the Church expects the faithful to be able to recognise what is Catholic and what is not? The Church authorities are the arbiters of the faith, and it is through the Church that revelation is interpreted. But it is not as if the Church is so stratified that only clerics and clergy can perceive what the faith is, whilst the laity are blind to it. Hence, the charge that Sedevacantism relies on private judgment is false. If Sedevacantism is true, it is not true by virtue of the private judgment of individuals. It is true as a matter of Catholic faith and magisterial law. Now we can consider the claim that if Sedevacantism is true, it would render the Church invisible. This claim is based on the fact that if Sedevacantism is true, the Catholic Church has far fewer members than most people believe, and may even lack a clergy. Both of these justifications are false. To begin with, there are many Sedevacantist clergy who have valid orders and who are able to administer the sacraments. The Lux Vera Directory contains a general global list of such clergy, but there are even international organisations such as the CMRI or the IMBC that can be mentioned. The existence of such organisations is also proof that the Church is not invisible. That the Church must be visible is one of its 4 marks or defining characteristics, but according to the Catholic Encyclopedia, the Church is materially visible when, quote, "it is a society which is public and manifest to the world, not a body whose members are bound by some secret tie." All that is required for the Church to be visible is that its members make themselves known as Catholics and are not hidden away as part of some occult club. Hence, the fact that there are Sedevacantist clergy and that Sedevacantist laity make themselves known as practicing Catholics means that, if Sedevacantism is true, the Church remains visible, even if its members are few in number. Finally, we come to the charge that Sedevacantism cannot be true, because if it were true, this would mean that the Church has defected, because it no longer has a hierarchy and cannot have another successor to St. Peter. This is not so. Firstly, as we have seen, the Church retains legitimate clergy. Secondly, the methods of papal election are subject to change and have changed throughout history. The use of cardinals is long-standing, but not necessary, and indeed, the Catholic Encyclopedia states, should the College of Cardinals ever become extinct, the duty of choosing a supreme pastor would fall not on the bishops assembled in council, but upon the remaining Roman clergy. Thus, we see that if Sedevacantism is true, the Church retains the power to elect a new pope. Finally, Christ's promise that St. Peter would always have a successor is not broken by an interregnum or gap between papacies. Indeed, such a gap occurs each time a pope dies. One might claim that if Sedevacantism is true, the interregnum is simply too long. But the challenge is returned. Where in the magisterium does it state how long an interregnum can be before it is too long? It doesn't. And the Church still retains the power to elect a new pope, and so a new successor to St. Peter can still be named. Therefore, we see that the Sedevacantist case can be made in principle. If Sedevacantism is true, it would not mean that Sedevacantism is fallaciously based upon private judgment, nor would it mean that the Church is invisible, nor would it mean that the Church has defected. Now that we have addressed Sedevacantism on matters of principle, we can proceed to examine the case on grounds of proof.